The words hit Zaylee like a slap across the face as Dr. Victor Lang's voice echoed through the bustling lobby of Seattle General Hospital. "This is a place of healing, not some twisted experiment in love between two women," he sneered, pointing directly at her and Rosalie while they sat side by side on the hard plastic chairs, fingers locked in quiet desperation. Heads turned instantly. Nurses pausing their charts, patients lowering phones, a mother with a toddler clutching her purse tighter, as the doctor's white coat seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights like a judge's robe. Zaylee's stomach dropped, the familiar burn of shame and rage twisting together until she could barely breathe. Rosalie squeezed her hand harder, her blonde hair falling forward to hide the flush creeping up her neck, but her voice stayed steady when she finally spoke. "We're here for her sister. That's all. You don't get to decide what our love looks like in a waiting room." Dr. Lang just shook his head, lips curling in disgust as he muttered something about moral confusion loud enough for the entire lobby to hear before striding toward the yard doors. The silence that followed felt heavier than any scream. Zaylee could feel every stare drilling into her skin, judging the way her thumb still traced small circles on Rosalie's palm even now, as if the simple touch proved his point. Inside, Zaylee's mind fractured into 1,000 pieces. She was 28, a pediatric nurse at a smaller clinic across town. Yet here she sat reduced to a spectacle because she dared to love the woman beside her. Rosalie, 27, the art teacher who had pulled her out of the darkness 3 years ago with late-night talks and gentle hands that never demanded she choose between love and survival. Their relationship had survived quiet dinners, shared apartments in Capitol Hill, and the slow building of a life together, but it had never survived her family's scrutiny. Pastor Thompson, her father, had made that clear the night she came out. "This isn't God's plan for you, Zaylee. It's destroying us." Her mother's tears, her brother's cold silence, and now her little sister's car accident somehow pinned on the stress Zaylee's choices caused. The text from her father still glowed on her phone. "Heard what happened. If you bring that woman here again, don't expect us to stand by you." Rosalie leaned closer, her voice a soft anchor. "Breathe. He's just one man with an ego bigger than his license." But Zaylee pulled back slightly, the inner war raging louder than the lobby's chatter. Part of her wanted to stand up, chase the doctor, and demand respect for the woman who held her through panic attacks and midnight shifts. Another part, the daughter who still craved her father's approval, whispered that maybe walking away from Rosalie would quiet the storm. The thought tasted like poison. She had spent years swallowing that lie, dating boys in college to please her parents, crying in dorm bathrooms because every kiss felt like betrayal to herself. Rosalie had changed that. Rosalie had shown her that love could be soft and fierce at once, that choosing herself wasn't selfish, it was survival. Yet the lobby felt like a courtroom, and the verdict was already written on every face. An older couple across from them exchanged whispers. A young man in scrubs averted his eyes too quickly. Zaylee's chest tightened with the weight of it all. The family pressure that had followed her from Texas to Washington, the social stares that never quite faded, the moral tug-of-war that left her questioning every decision. Was staying with Rosalie worth losing the last threads of her family? Was walking away worth losing the only person who saw her completely? The question spun faster as a nurse finally called them back for an update on her sister's minor fractures. But the damage from the doctor's words lingered like a fresh wound, raw and bleeding. They stood together, Rosalie's arm brushing hers in silent solidarity, yet Zaylee could feel the crack widening inside. The confrontation had only just begun, and she already sensed the price she would pay no matter which path she took. As they moved toward the double doors, the weight of every eye followed, and Zaylee wondered if love this real could ever survive the world outside their apartment walls. The update on her sister came quickly, stable, resting, nothing life-threatening. But the real storm waited in the family lounge down the hall. Zaylee's father stood by the window, arms crossed exactly like Dr. Lang's, his pastor's collar somehow sharper under the hospital lights. Her mother sat clutching a tissue, eyes red-rimmed, while her brother leaned against the wall scrolling his phone as if the entire scene bored him. Rosalie hesitated at the doorway, but Zaylee pulled her inside anyway. "She's with me," she said, voice firmer than she felt. The room went still. Her father didn't waste time. "We heard the doctor. Everyone did. Is this what you want for us, Zaylee? Public humiliation because you refused to see reason?" The words landed like stones, each one reopening scars she thought had healed. Her mother reached out, voice trembling. "We love you, sweetheart. But this choice is tearing the family apart. Your sister's accident. Don't you see the stress you put on her?" Zaylee's brother snorted without looking up. "Dad's right. You're making everything about you again." Rosalie's hand found hers under the table, a lifeline in the rising tide. Zaylee felt the old betrayal surge, the way her family had once celebrated her straight dates, the church youth group that prayed over her confusion, the quiet exile after she moved out with Rosalie. She had tried compromise once, skipping holidays, sending polite texts, even attending a family counseling session where the therapist nodded sympathetically while her father quoted scripture. Nothing worked. The pressure never eased. It only reshaped into new guilt. "I'm not choosing against you," Zaylee said, the sentence tasting like compromise and defiance at once. "I'm choosing honesty. Rosalie isn't a phase. She's the reason I get up every morning and face patients who remind me of the kid I used to be. Scared, alone, pretending." Her father's face hardened. Honesty? Or rebellion? That doctor was right to call it out. Hospitals aren't for your lifestyle parades. The moral line was drawn, the same one that had haunted her since adolescence. Love versus duty, self versus family, right versus the God she still sometimes prayed to in secret. Rosalie spoke then, voice low but unflinching. "I've watched Zaylee cry over your texts for 3 years. I've held her when the nightmares come back. If supporting her means standing here while you shame us both, I'll do it. But don't pretend this is about her sister. This is about control." The room crackled. Her brother finally looked up, eyes narrowing. "You're the one who turned her. Before you, she was normal." Betrayal sliced deeper. Family turning on the person who had saved her. Zaylee's mind raced through the trade-offs. Stay silent. Let them dictate her happiness. Keep the fragile peace that left her hollow. Or fight. Risk permanent exile, and build a life where Rosalie's love wasn't a secret. The inner conflict clawed at her. Every memory of childhood church picnics, her mother's proud smile at graduation, now poisoned by the same voices demanding she erase the woman beside her. She stood abruptly. "I'm not leaving Rosalie. Not for you. Not for anyone." The words hung final and terrifying. Her father turned away without another word, the rejection settling like concrete in her chest. As they left the lounge, Rosalie pulled her into a quiet alcove, foreheads touching. "You don't have to do this alone." But Zaylee felt the fracture spreading. Family bonds snapping one by one, social whispers already spreading through the hospital grapevine, moral guilt whispering she had chosen wrong. The price was mounting, and she wondered how much more she could lose before the awakening came too late. Chaos erupted 20 minutes later. Alarms blared as paramedics wheeled in victims from a multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate. Twisted metal and shattered lives pouring through the ER doors. Nurses shouted orders, doctors scrambled, and the lobby that had judged them moments ago became a war zone of stretchers and blood. Zaylee recognized the drill instantly. Her own shifts at the pediatric clinic had trained her for moments like this. When a nurse begged for extra hands, she didn't hesitate. "I'm licensed. Put me where you need me." Rosalie stayed back in the waiting area. Worry etched on her face, but Zaylee moved with purpose, scrubbing in alongside the overwhelmed staff. Dr. Lang was already in the thick of it, barking commands, his earlier arrogance replaced by frantic focus. Then the worst news came over the intercom. One of the critical patients was his own 16-year-old son, Marcus, ejected from the family car in the crash. The doctor froze for a split second, long enough for Zaylee to see the man behind the sneer crack. She was assigned to Trauma Bay 3, working beside Lang as monitors screamed warnings. Marcus's vitals plummeted. Internal bleeding suspected, but the initial scans inconclusive under the rush. Lang called for immediate surgery, but something nagged at Zaylee, the subtle sign she had seen in dozens of pediatric cases, the slight asymmetry in pupil response, the way the boy's breathing hitched in a pattern her clinic training flagged as splenic rupture missed in chaos. "Doctor," she said sharply, "we need a second fast scan and peritoneal lavage now." The first red overlooked retroperitoneal bleed. Lang glared, the same judgment from the lobby flashing in his eyes. "You're a visitor. Stand down." But the monitors dipped further. Zaylee stepped forward anyway, voice steady despite the pounding heart. I've seen this exact presentation in kids. If we open without confirming, we lose him. Tension crackled. Staff watching, Lang's face flushing with the same prejudice that had mocked her love minutes earlier. The decision hung. Trust the twisted woman he had shamed, or risk his son on pride. Alarms wailed louder. Lang hesitated, then nodded curtly. Do it. Fast. The next minutes blurred into controlled frenzy. Zaylee directing the tech, calling out the hidden bleed her eyes had caught, guiding the team while Lang scrubbed in. Rosalie waited outside, unaware yet carrying the weight of every choice Zaylee had made that day. Family texts buzzed ignored in her pocket, her father demanding she leave the scene of sin. The confrontation inside the bay mirrored the one in her soul. Prejudice versus competence, personal cost versus saving a life. As they rushed Marcus to Zaylee felt the first tremor of awakening. Her love for Rosalie had never been the weakness the world claimed. It had sharpened her into someone who stood when others folded. But the price, family exile, social fallout, moral doubt, still loomed, and the emergency had only just begun to force the reckoning. Inside the lights blazed and instruments clattered as Dr. Lang operated with Zaylee assisting at his side. The splenic rupture confirmed exactly as she had predicted. The bleed they would have missed without her call now contained, Marcus's pressure stabilizing under the team's coordinated push. Lang's hands moved with mechanical precision, but his eyes kept flicking to Zaylee, first in reluctant acknowledgement, then in something deeper. The earlier mockery hung between them like sterile smoke. Every suture he placed carried the weight of his words in the lobby, every monitor beep a reminder that the woman he had publicly humiliated was now the reason his son still had a pulse. Zaylee focused on the work, pushing down the exhaustion and the texts from her family that kept vibrating. Her mother begging her to come home without that woman. Her brother accusing her of using the crisis for attention. Rosalie's face flashed in her mind, the tender way she had kissed her goodbye before the doors closed. The quiet strength that had carried them through every family storm. The inner conflict peaked here under the surgical lights. Was her choice to love Rosalie worth the isolation? The stares, the moral accusations that still echoed from her father's voice? Yet saving Marcus felt like proof. Her identity hadn't weakened her. It had prepared her for moments when hesitation killed. Lang finally spoke through his mask, voice tight. You called it. I missed it. The admission came clipped, professional, but Zaylee heard the fracture. As the surgery closed successfully, the team exhaled collectively. Marcus would live. The crisis averted by the very twisted love Lang had condemned. Zaylee stepped back. Gloves snapping off, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. She had traded silence for action, family approval for a stranger's life, and the cost was already mounting. Her phone now silent from her father's final message. We're done enabling this. Rosalie met her in recovery, pulling her into an embrace that ignored every watching eye. You did it. You saved him. But Zaylee's tears came then, the awakening bittersweet. The doctor's son would wake to a father changed in ways Lang himself didn't yet understand. Yet Zaylee's own family remained fractured. The prejudice she faced daily now mirrored in the man who once sneered at her. The trade-off felt complete. She had proven her worth at the highest price, losing the last illusions of unconditional love from blood. As they waited for Marcus to stabilize, Zaylee realized the real emergency wasn't the crash outside. It was the one inside her heart, where loyalty and self collided head-on. Dr. Lang found them in the quiet corridor hours later, Marcus stable in ICU, the hospital settling into exhausted night mode. His shoulders slumped, white coat wrinkled, the arrogance stripped away by exhaustion and truth. He stopped 3 feet away, eyes dropping to the floor before he spoke. I owe you both an apology. What I said in the lobby, it was inexcusable. You saved my son when I let bias cloud my judgment. I was wrong. The bow came next, literal, deep. The man who had shamed them now bending in public view under the same fluorescent lights that had witnessed his cruelty. Nurses paused. A few patients watched. The reversal landed like thunder. Zaylee stood frozen, Rosalie's arm around her waist. The apology should have felt victorious, yet it tasted hollow against the fresh texts from her mother. A final plea laced with guilt-tripping scripture. Her brother had already posted on the family group chat, twisting the story into Zaylee causing drama again. Betrayal layered on betrayal. Family choosing reputation over her truth. The social circle she once called home now whispering the same prejudice Lang had voiced. Rosalie's eyes met hers, soft with understanding, but Zélie felt the moral dilemma sharpen. Accept the doctor's humility as progress, or see it as too little, too late when her own blood still rejected her? She answered quietly. Your son is alive because love taught me to see what hate overlooks. But words like yours don't vanish with one sorry. Lang nodded, face pale. I know. I have a daughter too, she's been struggling. I see now how my words could have crushed her the way I tried to crush you. The admission cracked something in Zélie, the awakening spreading beyond her own pain. Yet the confrontation wasn't over. Her father appeared at the end of the hall, summoned by hospital staff about the hero nurse, only to witness the apology. His face twisted in conflicted fury. This changes nothing about your choices, Zélie. The final standoff unfolded. Family versus newfound ally, prejudice versus reluctant respect. Rosalie stepped forward, voice calm. She chose me long before today. Your approval was never the requirement. The air thickened with the trade-off Zélie had feared. Her father turning away again, brother blocking her number, mother's last message reading, "We'll pray for you anyway." The betrayal cut deepest here, in the wake of victory. Proving social and familial rejection ran deeper than one doctor's ego. Zélie pulled Rosalie closer, the romantic anchor steady amid the storm. The decision crystallized. She would build forward with the woman who never asked her to shrink. The price, lost holidays, whispered judgments, moral exile from the only home she knew, was paid in full. Yet as Lang walked away humbled, Zélie felt the first true breath of freedom, even if it tasted like grief. Dawn crept through the hospital windows as Zélie and Rosalie sat beside Marcus's bed, the boy groggy but smiling weakly at his father's side. Dr. Lang hovered nearby, the bow from hours earlier now a permanent shift in posture. He spoke again, softer. I'll make sure the staff knows what you did. And if you ever need anything here, the door is open. The words carried weight, a bridge across the chasm he had created. Zélie nodded, but her eyes stayed on Rosalie, the woman whose steady love had anchored every hard choice. Their hands linked openly now, no shame left to hide. Outside, the world waited unchanged. Her father's final silence, the family group chat muted forever, the social circles that would gossip about the lesbian drama at Seattle General. Yet inside Zélie, the awakening had rooted deep. The confrontations, the betrayals, the trade-offs had stripped away the last illusions. Loving Rosalie wasn't the sin they claimed. It was the courage that had saved a life and forced a bigot to kneel. She leaned into Rosalie's shoulder, the quiet kiss on her temple a promise amid the ruins. The moral lines she once walked blurred into clarity. Right wasn't family approval or societal comfort. Right was the woman beside her and the choices that refused to let prejudice define her worth. As they left the hospital together into the early Seattle light, Zélie glanced back once at the lobby where it all began. The stairs felt smaller now, the doctor's shadow replaced by his humbled nod from the doorway. Family pressure lingered like an old scar, but it no longer dictated her steps. Rosalie smiled, squeezing her hand. We made it through. The sentence held every battle they had fought, the inner wars, the public humiliations, the painful decisions that carved them stronger. In the end, was the doctor's forced humility a true change of heart, or merely the price of his professional survival?